Friends, if all had gone as planned, right about now, we would be meeting tonight for our discussion of Max Lucado's book, Grace, and we would be discussing chapters 6 and 7. But such is not the case, as we all know. We find ourselves tonight isolated rather than together as a church family, and so I offer you this brief reflection as a way to help us all bridge that gap. Tonight we follow Max as he focuses on grace as it comes to us through the story of Ruth. Now, as Max puts it on page 73, Ruth's story is a picture of how grace happens in hard times, maybe like these. The story starts with a famine in Bethlehem, and that famine drives a Judean man, his wife Naomi, and their 2 sons to seek food and refuge in the foreign land of Moab. Things in Moab go pretty well. Their crops thrive. Their 2 sons marry 2 Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah. And then the bottom falls out. The husbands of all 3 women die. Naomi decides that she will head back to Bethlehem. She assumes that both her daughters-in-law will simply return to their Moabite families. Indeed, that is what Orpah does, but not Ruth. Ruth leaves her family and pledges her devotion to her mother-in-law, Naomi. Now, Ruth says to Naomi, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." Life in Bethlehem, however, is hard. Very, very hard. Especially for 2 widows who have neither land nor husbands, and as a result, no security of any kind. The 2 of them end up picking the remnants of the grain harvest in order to survive. But then God intervenes. Ruth finds a field of barley, and as the law permits, she follows the reapers, picking the grain that they miss. It's probably just enough to keep her and Naomi from starving. But then the owner of the field shows up, and his name is Boaz. Boaz is the whole package. Wealthy, good-looking, and, as Ruth soon learns from Naomi, a cousin on her husband's side. And Boaz takes a shine to Ruth. He treats her with uncommon kindness and generosity. And we all know how the story goes from here, including one of the steamier seductions in all of Scripture. But the point here is not romance. The point is grace. What Boaz does for Ruth goes beyond mercy. He shows her grace. And as Max puts it on page 72 at the bottom, not just mercy, mind you, but grace. Grace goes beyond mercy. Mercy gave Ruth some food. Grace gave her a husband and a home. Mercy gave the prodigal son a second chance. Grace threw him a party. Mercy prompted the Samaritan to bandage the wounds of the victim. Grace prompted him to leave his credit card as payment for the victim's care. Mercy forgave the thief on the cross. Grace escorted him into paradise. Mercy pardons us. Grace woos and weds us. But Ruth, with Naomi's help, also plays her part here. Hers is not a passive reception of grace. She is much more proactive than that. Hers is an active expectation of grace, or as Max puts it on page 74, grace is God walking into your world with a sparkle in his eye and an offer that is hard to resist. Sit still for a bit. I can do wonders with a mess like yours. Believe this promise. Trust it. Cling to it like a barnacle to every hope and covenant. Imitate Ruth and get busy, Max says. Go to your version of the grain field and get to work. This is no time for inactivity or despair. Take some chances. Take the initiative. You never know what might happen. You might have a part in bringing Christ to the world. Ruth did. Among the generations of her descendants was not only David, but our most famous king of all, Jesus. So friends, I leave you with some questions. 3, and you can consider these at home. 1, where in your life have you received kindness and provision that goes beyond mercy and becomes grace? And are there others? Who were those others who conveyed that grace to you? And 2nd, where might your grain field be? Where is it that you go to work in the world, not just seeking to experience God's grace, but to share it with others? Are there particular faces that come to mind as you think about that? And finally, the kicker. In a time when you and I are encouraged to be socially distant, how exactly might we become spiritually closer to one another and to complete strangers, like Ruth and Naomi, who have nothing? How do we show them grace? And might it be that we will experience grace by sharing grace with them? Friends, enjoy the discussion. We will see you on Sunday for our worship service on YouTube. Blessings.